Hey everyone, welcome to Swopping Stories. Uh, I'm here with Carlil Pittman. My name is Joel Rodriguez. I'm an organizer here at SWOP.
Everybody, Carlil Pittman, community organizer, executive director of Good Kids, Man City, Inglewood.
So, Carlil, this podcast, the intent is to let everybody that's interested in organizing the tools that us organizers that we use to build power. And one of the tools that you know that I'm passionate about and that I love teaching is the heart of organizing, which is one-to-ones. We've been working together ever since you're a sophomore in high school, and I've been able to see you grow into a powerful leader and organizer. What is your view on one-to-ones? How are they important to the work?
Yeah, I definitely think that, and I think from my experience, from my growth in organizing, it definitely came from my experience and what you taught me in organizing, and then what I also saw when I went to other spaces to see organizing. One-to-ones was always at the heart of that, right? That ability to build, sustain, or create a relationship. And so for me, I think that the importance that it brings is how are we to kind of build change for another person if we don't do the work of getting to know each other, having those difficult conversations, or even just the foundation of knowing who we're working with, who we're working for, or why we're doing the work that we do. And so I think that being able to learn the art and the skill of having a one-to-one, teaching a one-to-one, is the way that we're able to see the work and the foundation of the work continue to spread on for different groups, whether you're young or old, learning that skill. And whether we know or not, we're using these skills in everyday life. And so the ability to really take advantage of the art of doing a one-to-one is definitely something that I've had the luxury, because of you and the work, of learning how to do.
I agree. It is an art form, and it takes time, energy. Can you go back to when you were in Gage Park High School, and when we first started practicing one-to-ones? How was that for you as a young person? Because I know there's a lot of tension with young people, that some of these spaces, some of these conversations can be a little bit uncomfortable. It's getting out of your comfort zone. Tell me how was it as a high school student, if you could think back, understanding the power of one-to-ones, but actually practicing them, because that was something that I challenged
Yeah.
you all.
So I think that, so my memory thinking of back then, so I'm gonna give two examples. So the first one-to-one that I knew I had was the one-to-one that I had with you, because you specifically asked me for a one-to-one. And so that intentional conversation is what led me into the work. And then so part of what we were required to do as a part of the program was to have one-to-ones with each other, find other young people to have one-to-ones with. And so when we were learning how to do it, we were a part of Voice. So the Voices of Youth in Chicago Education was a collaborative of young people that were learning these skills. We kind of, the thing that stuck out to me, that we had we had like a mini retreat, and we were young people from a bunch of different schools. We all came together, and it was the first time we did the fishbowl. And I think that was the most awkwardest occurrence of creating this like big circle of people sitting around, and two chairs in the middle, and two people in the middle just having a conversation. And so the fact that we were just expected to just swap out and keep having the conversation, I think it was pretty awkward for some people. It was their first time doing that. But for those of us who have been practicing this, in our own groups, it was kind of like a different time doing it amongst all these other people. So I think that the fact that we're able to do this, but there are so many like-minded people who wanted to learn, and what you're really finding out in those conversations was powerful and impactful at the same time. And so I think that learning that skill earlier on, practicing it inside of our group, and then going out to be able to do it, I think that sometimes you have the hiccups when it's like the awkward moments, but that's why we also teach. You don't just go in to have the one-to-one, but you actually intentionally prepare to have that actual meeting. And so you prepare before, know what you're looking for in that meeting, what's the outcome you want to have, what do you want to share about yourself, but also afterwards how you're reflecting on what did you learn in that meeting and how are you using that information to build power.
Yeah, that's you're laying it out in a really powerful way. I think that one of the things that a lot of people don't understand is that a one-to-one is important to build connections and to build trust, especially with young people, because I think that young people, so they're consistently being looked down on. Their voices are not taken serious a lot of times, and so they're in spaces when we're challenging them with one-to-ones. These spaces are really difficult for them because we're taking them serious, and so it's like an aha moment for them. It's like, what do I do with this? So there's a lot of tension. There's a lot of awkward moments sometimes with young people. How important is it in a one-to-one for the individuals, both of them, to know their own story?
I think it's extremely important. I think that it can be more impactful if they're able to understand their own stories. I think that being an organizer, the person that reached out to have the one-to-one, them understanding that and being able to share their story, it helps the other person open up or helps the other person relate. So being able to be in a space where, even if I think that if I'm having a conversation with a young person or another person in general who knows their story, and I think a lot of times we know our story, but a lot of times, and I think more so in young people, we don't get the space. They don't get the space to talk about their stories or how that impacted them, right? And so I think that them being able to sometimes have those aha moments and not realizing how something may have affected them or how passionate they were about a certain area or a specific thing. But I think it's up to that organizer to identify what they're hearing in that time and in that space. And so being able to understand what are the questions you need to ask, or not having that fear of asking the questions that are burning in your mind, right? Building that kind of safe space for that to be able to happen. I think that as we're building organizers, or at least building leaders to understand their stories, I think it helps them more to be equipped to have those one-to-ones. So I think that's part of it, what we're teaching. When you asked me about how did I end up at Gage Park, I didn't realize that I was going down my, what do you call it? When the villains have their story, my arch story. I didn't realize I was, this is going to be the start of, or that incident was the start of what my passion and purpose in life would lead me to. For me, I thought it was just a regular occurrence of something that was just happening to young people, right? That I didn't do what I was supposed to do, so I was kicked out of school. But it took for you to understand the work that you're doing, part of your story, and what happens that wasn't normal to happen to me. And there is a group of young people across the city who are trying to make change about that same thing right now. And so me being able to understanding that my story now became part of this powerful book and this narrative, that this isn't normal for us and we're going to make a difference about it. And so me utilizing that and learning how to talk about that, using my story to represent others who've been through the same thing, but also understanding that these stories are uniquely ununique. So how do we learn and hone in on our stories, be experts of our stories, to talk about that, to bring that passion and that change that we're looking for?
Man, well said, man. It's inspiring to see individuals like yourself that I saw greatness in you from the get-go, but for you to come into your own, for you to really embrace organizing, really embrace leadership and community change is powerful. To see that just unfold before your eyes. I want to say there's something that I teach in one-to-ones all the time, is that it's incredible that we are in institutions, we're in schools, we go to work, we go to church, and a lot of times we don't know who we are. And I can remember when I was younger, especially when I was younger, there was so much going on in my brain and in my heart. And I had questions. I had questions that I was scared to ask adults because in my growing up, you don't ask questions, especially not the hard questions about faith and about authority and questioning authority. And so, it's incredible how people are isolated for no reason. We're in community, we're side by side, we're worshiping together, we're going to school together, and yet all the conversations are surfacey. It's all about sports, and so that's one of the things that I value about organizing. That organizing takes the layers out, and it really talks about who we are, right? Your center, my center, and we meet each other there, and we dream together, and we build together. Can I ask you you've been organizing for a minute now. You're now an executive director of your own organization, doing powerful work in West Inglewood, and you've been in countries representing your work and representing the South Side of Chicago. What has been the most powerful one-to-one that you have had? And even if we can do it like recently, what has been a one-to-one that you're like, man, this is powerful?
I think it'll be easier if I kind of tried to categorize it, because I think in the way that I'm doing my work now, right? I think the roles changes a little bit, and like an executive director role, because I'm responsible for more than just the organizing, right? So I'm having conversations around when we're talking about program and trying to recruitment and bringing in young people. There's one-to-ones I'm having with staff and community, but there's also one-to-ones that I'm having with funders and foundations. I think the intent of my story stays the same, me bringing myself into those spaces. But in those different areas, I'm looking for different things. And so I would say, as far as a young person, I think one of the most impactful one-to-ones that's coming to mind for me, the one-to-one I had with a young person who's in a program in the school we do in Claremont, and just wanted to know more about the young man. So we run a middle school mentoring program called LIT, Leaders in Training. And so I know this is a young man that usually sticks to himself, may get picked on some. And so we're having a conversation. I just pulled him to the side, we're talking. And as we're having a conversation, he's just expressing how, he's not from Chicago. He moved here a year ago, and he's homeless. And none of his peers knows that he's homeless. And I always wonder why this young man, as interested as he may seem when he's at the programming, whenever he's invited to any space, he shows up in that space. And when we say we're going to be somewhere, we're going to do something, he's looking for us to do that. And what I'm realizing is, one, he's trying to find ways to occupy himself, because there's a certain time period you have to be out and be back in when you're at the shelter. But also, he's looking for a sense of belonging and purpose. And so, for me, just listening to him speak, listening to his story, and engaging him around the organization, that kind of stands out for me, right? I feel for him, and the fact that no one even knows his struggle, his story. But again, that's not mine to share. So how do we continue to empower young people who are dealing with their own struggles and traumas to, one, grow and heal from those situations, but also how do I help to empower him to feel like he's more than his situation, or he can flip his situation into something else, because he's a powerful young man that has a powerful story. And so I'd be doing an injustice, or disservice, if I didn't try to spend the time to help him figure out what he liked to do with that passion, with his story. Aside from that, there's another young lady who's in the same program, different background, but she tends to get in trouble a lot. And when the teachers talk about it, just say, oh, she's a troublemaker, she's a problem child. And I just, again, today, just want to pull her to the side, because there was a situation where, the kids were goofing around, and they said, well, she's fine with it, and she just busted out in tears. And so I went there just to, pull her to the side and apologize for what happened, just to sit down and talk to her. And this young lady really enjoys the programming and wants to be a part of our leadership council. And I strike that as a great opportunity, because as much passion, or some may label it attitude or aggression, she has, she's a leader. And I think that the goal for organizers is, how do you transform that passion into power? How do you use that, or teach them how to use that to build something from it? And so for me, those are the ones with young people that's sticking out to me. But At the same time, as a executive director, I have to fundraise. I have to raise money for the organization, for the programming, for the staff, and just in the ability to have one-to-ones. One of the things that we say in the organizing, as you know, one of the most impactful tools we have is the ability to build relationships, to have one-to-ones, and you don't know what those turn into. And so a lot of times when I'm doing fundraising or having conversations, I'm getting recommended from folks who I've had one-to-ones with, who I've been in a relationship with since I was a teen, some that I'm introducing myself to and just building one-to-ones and having connections to, and it turned to something else later. And even yesterday, having a conversation with a guy from a foundation where this guy invented Grubhub, and now wants to give us funding for the next 4 years, and just having those conversations with each other because someone brought my name up. And so the fact that those type of things continue to impact on different levels, I think that's what makes it important when you're understanding why you're doing the one-to-ones. It helps with the intent, but also just still being able to bring myself and my story. Makes me more relatable. Makes me kind of ground myself still in who I'm accountable to in that moment and what I'm having this one-to-one for, but also just the interest in wanting to just know human beings.
Carlil, we are doing some great work right now. There's young leaders that you're working with that you are building up. What would you say to the young person, to the adult that's watching this, that has an appetite for learning more about organizing and wants to dive in and wants to start doing one-to-ones? What advice would you give someone that's just starting out?
Advice I would give is that you're already doing it. It just may be on a surfacey level. Kind of like you brought up, is that we can really be around people and not spend the time to really get to know that person. And so I would say start off in your home with your friends. Start asking the deeper questions, right? Why did you get out of bed this morning? Why do you do what you do? You know, ask questions that spike emotion. And I think that from there, you're able to really figure out how you can be accountable to someone's story, but also making sure that you spend time asking yourself those same questions, so that you're prepared to kind of engage in those conversations. And I would also say, in doing the one-to-ones, making sure that you're able to know why you're having it, identifying strong points afterwards that you can reflect on, but also just being prepared going into those spaces. One thing that I'll share, and it's something I thought about, you know, when you talk about how we can grow up with someone and not know their story. And I'll share how, you know, my brother and I, when we grew up, we had our great-great-grandmother. And we always went over there because my mom wanted us to go over there, but we didn't talk to her or anything. We just sit on the couch. And at her funeral, they told her story at her funeral. And they talked about how she was a housekeeper in Alabama for a German family, and her and the owner's son were in love. And she got pregnant. The father found out, and they let her know that he's going to try to kill you. And so my grandmother and the son ran away and left and came to Chicago. And that's how my family started, in Chicago. And I never knew that story at all. Found out about it at a funeral. And so the fact that that's a missed opportunity of questions that I can't even get the answers to, it kind of, you know, it hits different where we have all this opportunity now. How do we engage with our family, our peers, our coworkers now, to find out these stories, to understand our stories, but more importantly, how do we use that information now that we're accountable to it? So I would say ultimately the advice that I give is try to start somewhere with the folks that you're in a relationship now and start having more conversations.
Man, that's, you know, I had a really similar experience with my grandmother's life at her funeral. I was kicking myself because so many missed opportunities that I had with my grandmother, and I found out things about my grandmother at her funeral that I wish I would have heard her tell me instead of hearing it from somebody else. So I resonate with that. You know, I would also say for anybody that's interested in organizing, first do the reflection about your own life. But I would also, it's all about intentionality, right? You need to make it a priority. And I also say that it's in the one-to-one, it's hard to know where to take it. But I think the intent is how can you walk away knowing who that person is truly. And I always say, listen for open doors. Look for open doors. When somebody says something that's interesting, that's maybe a little bit too basic, a little bit too general, ask those why questions. Ask those questions that will allow you to take one layer off and go deeper into who that person is. And those open doors, listening for that is really important. And then I would also say every one-to-one, it's 80% listening and 20% talking, right? So you be vulnerable. You can share, but don't overshare. It's like people want to talk. We all so much of our lives are in isolation and silos, and one-to-ones give the ability for people just to just talk. And so I know when we're first doing one-to-ones, we may have the tendency of I want to find as many people I can talk to and talk. No, the art of one-to-ones, the true art of one-to-ones is sitting down and doing more listening than talking. So that takes discipline and it takes practice. So anybody that's listening, I would say be intentional and do as many as you can. The more that you do it, the more comfortable and the more powerful the one-to-ones are. So, man, Carlil, I really appreciate your time. And, man, let's continue to build some powerful leaders together.
Cool. Right. If you're interested in learning more about our organization, there'll be some links down below, kind of in this area. Also subscribe to the podcast for more of these interesting and impactful conversations. Thanks for having me.